Does being full-time self-employed as a freelancer, a coach, or a consultant inherently mean that your income is less predictable and less secure than what a day job with a consistent paycheck can offer? That is the topic of today's episode of The Cliff Ravenscraft Show.
Are you ready to take your message, your business, and your life to the next level?
Want to learn from someone with more than a decade of experience, training tens of thousands of people from all around the world?
Hi, Cliff. This is Pauline from Auckland, New Zealand.
John from Calgary, Alberta.
Amy Porterfield.
Michael Hyatt.
Dan here from Dunedin, New Zealand.
Ray Edwards.
Mark Mason. Mike Stelzner.
Pat from Smart Passive Income.
It's Darren from Melbourne, Australia.
Now is the time to live the life of your dreams and do the work you feel most called to do in the world.
Welcome to the Cliff Ravenscraft Show.
Here's your host, Cliff Ravenscraft.
Welcome back, my friend. Today's episode is going to be something that I know will resonate with so many people. And maybe this episode is the answer to the prayers you've been asking for. A perspective to help you understand this dilemma maybe that exists between you and your spouse. Now, this comes from a lot of conversations I've had over the years. There have been countless number of times that people have come to me. They say, Cliff, I want to do what you have done. I would like to escape the life of an employee. I would like to escape my soul-sucking day job, and I'd like to take my gifts, my talents, my area of expertise, and I'd like to become full-time self-employed. Now, for some people, that's being a freelancer. For some people, that's I want to be a coach or a consultant. Some people, they want to just be an educator, a speaker, a teacher, create courses, whatever the case may be. I have worked with hundreds of people over the last 15, 16 years that have desired to be full-time self-employed. However, like myself up until 2008, have lived an entire lifetime and been conditioned to think about life and security and responsible living as a husband and father. And by the way, this could be opposite. It doesn't matter. It's not just the father kind of in the man role here. But I'm speaking from my own experience, and a lot of the folks that have had this conversation specifically with, you'll understand the circumstance in just a moment. But where we've been conditioned to think that we're supposed to grow up, get responsible, get a good education, secure the highest paying job, and show up every day and bring home that safe, secure, reliable, consistent income. And so that one day you can retire and you have provided for your family. And that's the only acceptable way to think about being a responsible husband and father. Now, that not everybody has been brought up that way. I understand that. However, this is for those who have. Okay? This is for those who have. Now, what has happened in many cases, people come to me and say, Cliff, I am at a loss for what to do. My wife is absolutely freaked out about me leaving my day job. I have been working to build my business on the side. I've consistently grown it to where I'm making about $5,000 to $8,000 a month every single month just in my free time. I make about $220,000 a year as an employee. It doesn't seem to me that there's any indicator that would change. My wife has come to be very much reliant upon that for her feeling of safety. And whenever I bring up or broach the topic of me leaving that to pursue what I've been working on the side, this business that I feel most called to do, that I feel would bring more fulfillment into my life, it freaks her out. And I don't know that I could actually leave my day job with her feeling this way, because I don't feel like I would actually ever be able to get her blessing And I don't know that I would ever want to do this without her blessing. And yet I'm dying inside by not pursuing this. So the number of times I've had that conversation is off the charts. That might indicate why, when this topic was broached from a different perspective, from a client that I work with in a mastermind group setting, that I was able to free flow my response to his question about a topic just like this in the way that I did. And I actually am going to share with you my side of the recording of the insights that I felt prompted within to share. Now, I do want to let you know this is not uncommon. This is a scenario that takes place for many people, and this happens for people who are still employees who are struggling to leave the day job with the blessing of their spouse. And yes, the gender rules can be reversed. It's not just the way that I've set it up here. The other thing is, though, are the number of people who did leave the day job with that blessing, and yet the situation has turned out in such a way that the income has not been predictable. There's been lots of gaps. There's been lots of struggle, and the spouse is now freaking out and is encouraging the person, my client, to give this up and finally go back and get a job. Don't let this bruise your ego. Just go get a day job. That's what we need, please. And so, these things come up. These conversations are real. And by the way, I'm the first to admit that if you think that leaving your day job and just making a groovy, amazing, high income earning living from the things that you're an expert at is all pie in the sky and it's easy, and if you just follow this formula, this framework, you just attend my workshop and within 90 days you can replace your income, or within the next 12 months you're going to have a six-figure business. I don't believe that for a second. And I don't teach that. And yet a lot of other people do. And quite frankly, a lot of people take a bit of their nest egg, a bit of their savings, and invest in $20,000 and $50,000 and $100,000 programs, then learn all the frameworks, the formulas, the steps and guides and all this other stuff. They go invest countless hours. They make $1,000 or $2,000, and then they go put their notice in, only to get crickets afterwards because there's so much that they don't have. So in those scenarios, by the way, where somebody has a day job and they've been building something on the side for the last 2.5 years, and it's at $5,000 to $7,000 a month every single month, and they're making $220,000 a year, well, what I recommend is here's what I would encourage you to do. Don't even broach the topic of leaving your day job ever again with your spouse until your business is consistently generating at least $20,000 to $25,000 a month every single month. And if you can't get there with the day job, then I would encourage you to rethink about what's possible here, because I'm telling you, I believe that is within your realm of possibility, and it's going to be something that you'll want to do to be able to make this transition and give your wife the peace and security that she desires. Because if you could actually get to the place where in your free time, your business is paying for all its own expenses, and it is actually able to pay you the equivalent amount of income than what you're currently making, but you're doing it in your free time, then let's just say it takes you anywhere between 6 months to 12 months to actually get your business from this $5,000 to $8,000 a month to this $15,000 to $20,000 to $25,000 a month. However long it takes you, you don't need that extra income. So start pushing it away into retirement, put it into investments, put it away into some buffers and savings and things like this. And when you get there and you've got like 4 months or 5 months of 20 to 25K months, sit down and show your wife what you've done, or your spouse in this case. Sit down and show them what you have done, what you have achieved, the buffer that you've built, and how this is predictably and reliably happening. And yes, there's some ups and there's some downs and stuff like that, but we've kind of buffered that with all of the savings and emergency funds and stuff like this. This is how I've already generated enough that this business, even if I didn't earn any more income, it could pay for us to go out and do this. But we've already validated this thing. Then there's likely to be some buy-in because you've actually demonstrated some predictability. You've demonstrated some consistency. Now, ideally, this is what would be the best case scenario for anyone thinking about leaving their day job to launch into their own full-time self-employed lifestyle as a freelancer or a coach or a consultant or at whatever business opportunity you're going into. Now, that wasn't my case. I did actually demonstrate that I could generate $3,000 to $5,000 a month every single month in my free time. And I did have a bit of a buffer, and we were able to go 9 months without earning a single penny in a paycheck from my new business during the first 9 months of being full-time self-employed, and even in the last 3 months only bringing in $11,000 net income after taxes. That's what I made for my first year, and it was terrible as far as a financial situation. It revealed to me all sorts of issues with my lack of ability to control my emotional state. It exposed so many limiting beliefs. It set me into a recognition that I need to shift some things about how I approach my physical fitness and health. It did. That first year was perfect for what I needed to wake me up to a different way of living. And I'll never wish my first year in business were different. I will never wish that I had waited until my business was consistently reliably producing a predictable income. Because if I had that, I would not have learned the incredibly challenging lessons that I learned in that first year. But if you could avoid some of those things and maybe come out of your first year of full-time self-employment with a gallbladder, that'd be kind of beneficial maybe. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm coming from. Now, where is this episode? What's going to be contained in the remainder of this episode? This topic, this theme comes up over and over again. And in a recent mastermind group that I was facilitating, I had a client who has been married for more than a decade, and he and his wife have an incredibly loving, very respectful, very connected relationship. Yet there has been one issue that has been a contention and in the relationship scenario. So the scenario here is that before these folks got married, my client in my mastermind group setting had been a freelancer his entire life. And prior to getting married, his wife, before they were married, had a professional career in an industry that is very known, very predictable, very secure in a lot of people's minds. Okay, so he said, listen, we're basically on the same page on so many things in life. There's this one area that seems to be an issue it's rearing its head in conversation more and more frequently recently. And that is, my wife will tell you that she's the first person to say that I have an employee mindset. And she will tell you that what I want is security. I want safety. And for me, security and safety is found in a day job with a regular paycheck. Now, my client, when they first got married, was a freelancer, coach, consultant, whatever you want to say. He was already this self-employed lifestyle, yet she had a predictable, reliable income. And when they first got married, they had a double income. And through a series of events and decisions were made in their relationship that she dropped her professional pursuits, focused on family, and then all of a sudden now the family relies on a single income, which is my client's income, which has always been freelance. Now, here's a phrase that my client had said. By the nature of the freelance work that I've been doing for years and years, when the money was there, it was always good. But we knew that there would be gaps, because that is what freelance is. You don't always fill in every single gap. When you have time to do work, there's not always work to fill that time. That's just it. So he said that within recent years, these gaps have been more and more pronounced, which is why he's been feeling an increasing amount of internal pressure to bring in more revenue more predictably in his business. And so on that notion, he's like, okay, I recognize my wife's need for more predictability. And of course, I'm recognizing my own need for it at this time, for some predictability in my business income. And being a freelancer only may not be the solution. And so he's, ever since, for the last more than 10 years, he's been thinking about different business ideas, kind of a plan B as a self-employed business owner that will allow him to have more predictability, more consistency, more reliability, and an even flow of income. Now, the situation is recently that freelance work that has been going on for many years was coming to an end, and he and his wife are aware of it. And he's been working on several different business ideas and business models that didn't quite pan out. And most recently, within the last year and a half or so, has done something that has gained some attention of one particular corporate client that has hired him consistently for more than 9 months, and at an income level that, if you put what he's been bringing in from this corporate client on a coaching perspective, on top of his freelance gig, has been bringing in more income per month every month than they had ever even dreamed of in their financial income for their family. Yet, in spite of that, his wife will say, listen, you know that this freelance work is about ready to come to an end, and it's great that you have this one corporate client, but you have no idea where your next client. When are we going to see more predictability? When are we going to see this? And my client's feeling this pressure, and so he's like, how do you guys bring this up? Given the fact that as a freelancer, as a full-time self-employed business owner, how do you navigate the inherent lack of predictability of what we do? And he's specifically talking about the inherent lack of predictability in a consistent stream of income in what we do. And this was in a mastermind group setting, so other people were given an opportunity to speak first. As a facilitator of the group, I always let everyone else kind of throw in their things. In my next level mastermind group, we have some people with amazing business experience, lots of different areas of expertise, and lots of different education, lots of different skills and talents. And so I let everybody else pour all of that in. And then at the end, I tend to come in with what I feel, it hasn't been said already, and some additional understandings that come from my perspective. And of course, like I said, I've had this conversation with so many people over the last 16 years. And what I have done here is I have taken what I shared with my client in response to his question of how have you navigated the inherent predictability of what we do in your own situation, and especially if you have a spouse that questions whether or not the self-employed lifestyle is the right path. How have you navigated this for yourself? And so what I've done is I've taken my response, I've edited out everything that might have any personal reflection of who this person is and things of that nature. But what came out was not prepared. I want you to understand, when this person came to the hot seat that day, I had no clue what he was going to bring up. This topic was not prescribed ahead of time. I had no time to prepare for this. This is just what happened in the flow. And what I shared after I finished this mastermind call, I'm like, oh my gosh, this needs to be a podcast episode. I have not yet created a podcast episode on this topic. And while I know that I didn't prepare what I said ahead of time, that flowed from me in such a way that while, yes, it's all my stories, yes, it's all my beliefs, yes, it's all of my, all of this stuff, the way that it came out, there's seemingly a source beyond myself that led me to say exactly what I said in the way that I said it. And I don't know that I could recreate it in a podcast episode. So for that reason, I did go in and do some creative editings. You're going to hear some beeps in here, and I'm taking out maybe a name of a company or a name of a spouse so that I can keep everything confidential. But this topic is universal for so many people. Is it inherently less predictable income-wise of being full-time self-employed? There seems to be an incredible amount of evidence to that. Have I seen ebbs in my business income? Yes. You'll hear me talk about some of that in my recent experience in this response. Very authentic, very transparent in this episode. And then I've seen massive flows in my business revenue. And I'm talking, I've seen $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 months in my business. So yes, it might be a little bit less predictable. It might be less consistent. But there's a question of, is it more secure? Is there more certainty that one can have by actually sticking with the safe, secure, responsible route of the life of the employee with a day job and its consistent paycheck? And here is what I had to say. I think that having a job and a paycheck is somewhat of a lie when it comes to answering people's need for certainty, because those are just as uncertain as being self-employed. Countless stories of people who wake up one morning after 25 years of investing in and working in a company, and they're just 3.5 years away from retirement with a pension, only to be faced with a box sitting on their desk and saying, we have to let you go. Another thing that's not guaranteed, we only technically, I'm going to go probably just a few minutes over. If anybody needs to jump straight at 11 o'clock, feel free to just jump out and no big deal. But we have 4 minutes left in the scheduled time of this call. Do you know that not one of the 4 of us are guaranteed to make it to the end of this call alive? We're all one heartbeat away from eternal rest. And it could happen at any time, for any reason, for anyone. Nothing is truly certain. Now, here's the situation, though. There is a high level of faith in the certainty of a day job and a paycheck. And when there is a high level of faith and certainty in a day job and a paycheck, there's a vibrational trust in God and or the universe. And I'm using all sorts of different languages for different folks that's on our call. So there's a great level of trust in that. And there is this thing called the law of attraction, for which I believe in very heavily. And when there is a trust in the law of attraction in a day job and a paycheck for certainty to be there, then it's not out of the realm of possibility to expect there to be a certain level of what's anticipated from a day job and a paycheck. What I am saying here, if it hasn't already occurred, is that if one had the same level of trust and faith in God, in the money being there from a full-time self-employed lifestyle, if the faith and expectation and trust in our deity were there, we would experience the same likelihood of the money arriving always when it needs to be there. That's the one thing that I would share, is that what we're dealing here is a lack of faith and trust in a certain path compared to another path. And so where is our faith and trust in God to be our provider? The interesting thing for me is I think about this. In all of your years, when has there ever been a time that what you needed was not available? And maybe you could point to a handful of times where something unexpected happened and stuff like this, and there was a little bit of season where those things. But in each of those, if I think about my own life, I think about how those put me in a crunched, tense position where all of a sudden I was shaken out of my hypnotic rhythm of how I was doing things in my business, only to recognize that I need to do something different. I can't do what I was doing before. And then I go and do something different. And as a result of that, I'm actually making way more money with less time invested. And I eventually see that season of the valleys, if you will, in my income as one of the greatest life lessons that got me to the place where it's like there was an 18-month period of time where I'm making $29,500 a month. No day job that I'm aware of is going to pay me $29,500 a month. And by the way, I'm in a season right now. We just paid for a massive wedding and all this other stuff. Roofs up there leaking. You know, I'm used to an average monthly revenue in my business of $20,000 a month. Lets us pay all of our bills. I'm currently averaging somewhere, like if we just look at recurring revenue that's on the committed books, just over $8,000 a month. Does that freak me out? Do I look like I'm stressed or anxiety-ridden? No, I'm not anxiety. Why is that? Because I know I just need one paid in full client each month to bridge the gap between my $8,000 to $20,000. And when Heather came on last month, that it did that exactly. And so I took actually I had 9,000 and then the 15,000. So here's the next thing I will tell you that I do. And this is I found a book many years ago and it was called O-N-O. I don't know if this book is still available anywhere, but it doesn't matter if you read the book or not. I'm going to tell you the whole purpose of the book. O-N-O stands for options, not obligations. Options, not obligations. And what he suggested is that you create some sort of fake holding account in your bookkeeping that says anything above and beyond what's required for all of the expenses in your business and paying you what you need to get paid, if there's more money in your account, then shovel all of that money into a fake future check that you write to yourself that you're not going to write to yourself called O-N-O. And so I would always try to keep $20,000 in my O-N-O account, which is a buffer, which means that, wow, let's just say I have $20,000 in my O-N-O account, and I only am bringing in $5,000 a month. I need the business to write me a check for $10,000, but the business only has in what's there $5,000. So what I do is I take that $20,000 hold and drop it down to $15,000. Now I've got $10,000 to write myself the check. So does that make sense? So what I'm doing is I'm actually holding an escrow emergency fund inside of my business for those months where it's low. The other thing is I just tap into that faith and trust. It's like, well, I've been around long enough to know that if I was really in a pinch, I know that I can come up with a creative idea. I'm sitting here since the beginning of this year, been averaging right around 10 to 15K a month and stuff like that. And I might have freaked out about that in the past, but one of the things that comes along with being in business for so many years to know on what's possible on the upside. All I have to do is create a 10-person workshop in person for $2,000 a piece. That's $20,000 in a weekend. And you know what? If I wanted to, I could do one of those each month, every month. And that's just one idea of an incredibly large number of ideas. And you know what? I can come up with all those ideas and I can implement them. Why can I do that with such confidence? Because I have been full-time, self-employed, serving tens of thousands, nay, hundreds of thousands of people over the last 2 decades of my life, pouring into them. Majority of them never have paid me a single penny for anything, but they're just waiting for the one offer that will resonate with them. And as soon as I put it out there, they'll buy it. And you know what? I'm able to do that because I'm full-time self-employed. Even though I pivoted away from Podcast Answer Man, even though I pivot from this, I still have built up a reputation. I have built up visibility, and I have built up an unlimited number of opportunities. And these people, this community is mine. But if I was doing all of this for the last 2 decades for a company that has been paying me $200,000 a year, and I have that secure paycheck, and I have that secure job, and then they let me go, all of those relationships for the last 2 decades of my life are gone, and I start over from scratch. That is not freaking security in my mind. The thing is you're on a journey. You do have, by the way, I'm going to put myself on a limb and just say this. If worse got to worse and things got really seriously in a tough spot, you got connections that you've built in and say, guys, listen, I'm in a really bad pinch here. You guys know the value that I bring. I would love to know, where can you use me in your organization? I'm simply looking for a job that will pay me X number of dollars per year. I'm looking for $170,000 a year as an employee. Where can you create a role for me in your business? Now, I'm not saying that you'll actually get into a position where that's necessary, but do you see how, does that, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think the chances are that that could even be possible? That's exactly what I'm saying. This is what we don't know. We don't know what the future is. None of us do, employees or business owners. Everything's unknown. And so much of all life is a life of trust, of faith, and of expectancy, and of understanding that we have the ability to create and that there are opportunities out there. And my position is more customers equals more security. And when I'm an employee, I have one customer. Now, convincing your wife of all of those things, probably not the best use of your time. However, not getting triggered when she expresses how she thinks and perceives the situation, that is all within your control. Every time says, when are we going to see the money? It is a reminder to me that my wife perceives security in day jobs and paychecks. And it's a reminder to me all of the things I know from my perspective, from my experience, about the potential on the upside for this. And it's also a reminder to me to make sure that when we have waves of great income, like so thankful to God for bringing into my life. Wow, isn't it amazing how that just showed up exactly when I needed it? Anyway, comes along to help bridge the gap of things, and with my $9,000 a month and the other things I'm working towards, every time says this to me, it's a reminder that there are things that I can do, such as creating buffer accounts, emergency funds, tucking little money away in the leaner months, so that I can say, hey, here's one of the things that I've been doing. each month that I'm above X number of dollars per month, I've been tucking away money here that's not used towards anything other than being there for those months when the income is lower, so that there's a consistency over the course of the year. So what is the most I would be ideally paid if I was a full-time employee? How much income would I bring in? I would figure out what that number is, and then I would make sure that's the number that I go for my business to pay myself. If the business is ever able to pay myself more than that, I would not do it based upon my reminders from that this is not what she wants. She doesn't want big waves of income to come in. She wants consistency. So anytime I could pay myself more than I would in a reasonable, predictable income from a day job, I'm going to tuck all of that extra money away inside of my business somewhere in my options, not obligations, so that I will always be able by the end of each year say, listen, first 3 months of the year, we were hitting 25K. Then we dropped down to 5K. Then we went up to 17K and stuff. But do you see how over the course of this 12 months, my business has always paid me this amount, which would be the same I would expect from a day job? This is what each time reminds me of that is how I could potentially provide that for her. Well, there you go. That is what I had shared in response to my client. And I know for a fact that this particular topic has resonated with so many of you who are thinking and contemplating leaving the day job. And yet either you and or your spouse have a mindset that the day job is a more secure and more certain route. Now, I'm not going to try to convince you that the full-time self-employed lifestyle is something that you should do. I'm certainly not trying to convince you that being full-time self-employed is more secure than having a day job and a consistent paycheck. In fact, I think they're equally as secure. They're equally as certain in the fact that I don't think any of them have any certainty to them whatsoever. We're not promised anything beyond our very present moment. Now, with that being said, the question is, what is the path of your heart? What is it that brings fulfillment and joy into your life? What is it that you would like to do if you so happen to have the opportunity to choose your own way? What does your heart desire? Now, don't get me wrong, there's lots of things that can go wrong being full-time self-employed. There's a lot of things that can go wrong in the day job. That's the key here. Not one is greater than the other. Now, of course, I do want to say one more time, real quickly here, the client in this mastermind setting said this: how have you guys navigated the inherent predictability of what we do? And so what you heard me say is, this is how I have navigated this for myself. These are the thoughts that flow through my mind as I have wrestled with this for myself, because I can tell you right now, when I first contemplated leaving my day job, I had the mindset of an employee. I had the mindset that this staying in insurance, being in the family business, the job security that comes with that, the predictability of this industry being there for probably throughout my lifetime and beyond. Whereas who knows what's going to happen in the world of podcasting in this industry or whatever. People were already predicting that podcasting had reached its peak by 2007, and people were saying podcasting as an industry is dead. Now, I didn't believe them, and I had lots of reasons why I didn't believe them, and turns out that I kind of made a right decision, but I could have just as easily made a decision to go into full-time an industry that did die and flatline and kind of had no future. But the question is would I have pivoted? What else could I have done? The opportunities for me are infinite. And if I wanted to, I could always go back to insurance if I needed to. Now, I could go back to the family business for as long as the family business still existed. And if my dad ended up retiring and selling the business and that was no longer an opportunity, I still have 12 years of experience as an insurance agent with being one of the top salesmen in the United States of insurance. I'd have no problem getting a job. The opportunities are just there. And that's what gave me so much peace to know that the opportunities are out there. And also, I can't emphasize enough the thing that I emphasized, I hope, the most out of everything I shared in this episode, and that is faith and expectancy. Faith and expectancy of what's to come. Now, I could focus on the downsides of being an employee, or I could focus on all of the downsides, all of the things that could go wrong, that all of the things that could fail, all of the potential catastrophes that I could bring upon myself and my family if I go full-time self-employed. I could focus on all of the problems that is there potentially. Or I could choose what I do choose, and that is I could focus on all of the opportunities that exist in a day job. I could focus on all the opportunities for me to find different ways to shift how I show up in my work role to be more fulfilled in my day job. Or I could focus on all of the opportunities that exist for me that would not be available to me if I were to go full-time self-employed. I could focus on all the possibility, all of the potential. I could focus on all of those things, not ignoring the potential drawbacks, not ignoring the potential dangers, but just having an awareness that the potential and the possibility is what I feel drawn to pursue and to attain and to achieve and to experience. That's my expectation, is this, whether it's the day job, whether it's full-time self-employed. Now, for me, I've been full-time self-employed more than 16 years now. I don't know that I could imagine myself being an employee again. And that is in the lean times. Now, I have been very transparent, very authentic in this episode by not editing out where income levels have been in our business. Now, for me, our business needs to generate a minimum of $20,000 a month to pay for all of our business expenses and to pay me and my wife a paycheck that meets our current lifestyle standards that we have set for ourselves. And I can tell you right now, there's in the last 14 years in our business, that's never been an issue. We've always averaged at least $20,000 per month, and sometimes in several years, much, much more than that. Now, at the end, the last quarter of 2023, I began shifting and testing a different approach to some of the things that I was doing. And quite frankly, given the fact that I have a higher emotional need for variety in my life than certainty, I was kind of getting bored with some of the things that I was doing, the way that I was doing them. So I needed more novelty. I needed something new, something that was a little bit more of a challenge. And so I attempted and tried a bunch of new things over the final quarter of last year. And as a result of those things, I got significant results from all the actions I took. Now, the results that I got were during the first 3 months of 2024. I served an immense number of individuals who are in the earliest stages of building their online business. We're talking about people who have a day job and they're trying to validate their product. They're either making no money or making a couple $100s a month, all the way up to, let's just say, $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 a month. Also, many of those people that I was serving during the first 3 months of this year Many of them were already full-time self-employed business owners. That means they have left the day job, or in some cases, the day job had left them. That means that they were laid off or let go or fired for various different reasons. But now they're out there trying to make it on their own. They see themselves, identify themselves as a full-time self-employed business owner, where the average monthly income from their business pursuits was between $1,000 all the way up to, let's just say, $6,000 per month. And the scenario that I was going after was tons of one-on-one coaching calls. In the event that I would actually bring in some people into my paid mastermind group and all that. But the thing is that the place where I went, the place where I sought referral only, and the fact that I stopped doing some filtering and setting standards for who I would actually offer the Prosperous Coach method for creating clients to, I ended up serving an incredible number of people, and I'm talking probably about 150 people during the first 3 months of this year, who were not in a financial position to pay for any of the existing products or services that I had. Not in the short term. Now, don't get me wrong. What I did during the first 3 months of this year, hands down, will reap a harvest 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 18 months from now, 5 years from now. Those people that I served, they are going to gain so much momentum. A majority of them will gain so much momentum. Some of them just don't have the mindset yet, and we're arguing for their limitations, but very few did that. But most of them, there's going to be a massive harvest that I will reap years down the road. Yet, another thing that I did in my business is I made a decision a long time ago to incentivize paid in full clients. So that, let's just say, instead of paying $15,000 a year or $1,000 a month or for 15 months, I would say, hey, you could either pay $15,000 paid in full, or you could pay $1,250 a month for 12 months. So basically, in essence, you're going to save $3,000 if you pay me in full. So practically, I gave everybody an option to save $3,000 if you pay me in full instead of monthly. Now, before I started doing that, I just offered people monthly. And because of that, the number of clients that I had was always more than 20 clients. And so I always had more than $20,000 a month. However, since incentivizing paid in full, a majority of my clients pay in full. And so that money is there. And what happened was I did not have as big as a buffer, and some unexpected situations and circumstances arose over the last several years as a result of this. And because of that, I'm now serving clients who have paid in full, and the monthly recurring revenues are at an all-time low. These are all just things because of things I've tried in my business. I have changed my approach to how I'm pricing. I'm changing my approach in how people can pay me. I'm changing my approach into how I'm reaching people. I had changed my approach for who I'm reaching, how I'm reaching them, how I'm serving them, what products and services. And every time I change my approach, I always get results. Not all of those results are desired. And so that's exactly what I'm sharing with you here. Is that I'm in a season where there has been less recurring revenue. And as a result of that, sometimes it's been as low as $9,000. Sometimes it's as low as $13,000. It's as low as $15,000. Thankfully, so far, by the grace of God and just an absolute overwhelming just sense of just being guided to do the right thing at the right moment, we've never had to tap into like the home equity line of credit to cover my paycheck. There's always been some way that things have worked out, and it seems to continue to happen that way. And I've taken everything that I've experienced during the past the final quarter of last year and the first quarter of this year. And when I went on vacation here in July, I'm like, I don't want to go back to doing business the way I was doing it and the way I was perceiving it before. And just before I went on vacation in July, I had rebooted my health and fitness routines. I had rebooted my early morning routine. I had rebooted a lot of incredibly powerful things that had served me in the past. And I had a lot of ideas of what I wanted to shift and change in the future. But one of the things that I hadn't yet done was reflect on how I want to approach those things, how I want to market those things. And I was still going into it with a lot of the hypnotic rhythm of what I've done. And I'm like, no, I don't want to go back to the hypnotic rhythm of what I've done. I want to evaluate what I've done. I want to evaluate the results and ask, do I want the same results? The answer to that was no. And what I've been doing is like, okay, given that, what are some approaches that I've had in the past that have worked incredibly well that I have since abandoned? And why have I abandoned them? Is there much of that I could bring back? And the answer to that question is yes. And then what new things could I try? What new things? And I've been reading lots of books and working with coaches and mentors, and there's all sorts of possibilities. And so, these things, they ebbs and flows, they come, they go. And my life is just as certain today, and it is just as predictable today. It is just as guaranteed to have the results today as back when my business was making as $29,500 a month every month consistently for 18 months. It's just as predictable today, and just as certain today, just as guaranteed financially today as the months back when in 2013 and 2014, when I was having $55,000, $65,000, $75,000 and massive months where it generated $750,000 in one 12-month period of time, so that I would have the funds to not only pay for the down payment of our dream home, pay for a mortgage on the new home for several months while we potentially had to pay for the mortgage on the old home, while also furnishing the new home. I mean, my income, where it sits right now, is just as guaranteed as it was back then. And that means it's not guaranteed. There is no certainty. And having faith, trust, and expectancy, and not just blind faith, not just blind, but experience. I'm going to be 52 years old in January, and in my nearly 52 years on this rock going around the sun, I will tell you that there's never been a time in my life where my worst fears, my worst catastrophes and imaginations in my mind have ever played out. In fact, the times and experiences that seemed to be the most challenging, where I allowed myself to get caught up in a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of worry, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of lack of confidence, it is in those moments that have shaped some of the greatest periods of growth in my life, that I would never want to go back and change those. I am who I am today as a result of those experiences. And so many times it shook me out of an approach that, sure, I could have continued. But the thing is today I'm able to earn exponentially more in exponentially less time. And I have such an exponentially larger amount of margin in my life. And it didn't come overnight. It's come over the course of the investment in my case, hundreds of thousands of people's lives, pouring value into them. Hundreds of thousands. And actually, I could even say millions if you don't just talk about the people that I've reached with my own content over the years, but if you think about the stages I've spoken on and the clients that are influencers who each have hundreds of thousands of people in their communities that are, Michael Hyatt and Pat Flynn and John Lee Dumas, and the number of times the story of me and my journey and influence in the lives of some of these people are in their books, countless podcast episodes where they bring me up in conversation and people hear about me. My message, my voice, my influence has literally reached in the millions of people. And it's because I have consistently gone down the path that I have felt called to go down as a full-time self-employed business owner. Now, have I pivoted from one industry and one focus to another? Yes. Do I have the opportunity to do that for an infinite number of times for as long as I live? Absolutely. I could change anything in a heartbeat. But what won't change are the times that I've impacted and influenced people's lives. And what I said earlier, and I don't think I actually used the word, but there's this thing called reciprocity. And I have an investment in a deposit of reciprocity in the lives of so many people that a lot of them have heard me for years talk about products and services that I offer. And you know what? Just so far up until now, for a vast majority of those people, there's never been a product or service that I've actually mentioned that I offer that has resonated with their current need. But there's countless stories of people who, for example, my friend Heather, who signed up and joined Podcasting A to Z back in 2013. That was a $2,000 investment. And then later, about a year later, she came to a one-day business mastermind that I hosted at the very first ever podcast movement conference where I was the closing keynote speaker. And we had an incredible one-day mastermind event. She paid $1,000 to attend that event there. And that was transformative. And she's been listening for so many years since then. And then 10 years later, makes a $15,000 investment to be a member of the Next Level Mastermind. She just joined back at the very final week in June of 2024. And so these things, this is what I'm talking about. It's like it's about continuing to plant seeds. It's about continuing to add value. It's about continuing to be of service. It's about continuing on the path that is in alignment with what you feel most called to do in this world. And for me, that's at some level, it is making those deposits, which actually is the greatest sense of certainty in my life, that I'm doing what I feel called to do. And I have this rock solid faith. I have this rock solid expectation that I will reap what I sow. And that is what I wanted to share in this episode. By the way, if you are interested as a full-time self-employed business owner to have a group of people who can speak into your life at this level, I encourage you to apply today for the Next Level Mastermind. Again, that's over at nextlevelmastermind.info, not nextlevelmastermind.com. That's somebody else's mastermind. But if you go to nextlevelmastermind.info, go there, read about it. Have any questions you have, email me, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com, or just go ahead and apply. Click on there, set up the application, submit it. I can't wait to potentially work with you. And by the way, if you're not in a position where the Next Level Mastermind is a good fit for you, if you're not already in business, full-time, self-employed, you haven't already validated your product and service or whatever, if you're an early stage entrepreneur, I have a group coaching program. I'll share with you as you join this group coaching program. You can go through my Building an Online Business course. Gives you my 11-step formula for what I believe is necessary for you to actually see success in business. Not one of those things I'm going to guarantee you a time frame of when you're going to get success. For some people, they can take what they've experienced and they've got a network and they've got a charisma, and you could be like a John Lee Dumas and knock it out of the park. You could be like an Amy Porterfield who has an incredible network of people. You could have some initial success that is going to skyrocket you out there with some amazing results. Or you could be the average person where it takes you anywhere between 12 months to as much as 2 or 3 years to kind of figure out what is it that I'm meant to do in this world. Where is that mix of my passion that meets a demand in the market, that fills a need for a client or a customer? These are the things to figure out. But anyway, I have a group coaching program that meets every single week. I'd love to talk to you about. I still have not yet created that sales page. So email me, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com if you are interested. And until next time, I encourage you to take everything you do to the next level.